Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We're so excited to welcome Miss Lina Ashar today. Um, Lina has been a longtime supporter of Microschools Network since we first started. She had gotten Dreamtime Learning off on the great foot that they are at today. Lina will talk, I'm sure, a little bit about her school. She's got Dreamtime Learning Hubs. She's also has started Billabong High School, Kangaroo Kids. Just an incredible educational entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience opening schools, advocating for learner-driven experiences, and more. And so it's a real pleasure to have her today. And before I turn it over to you, Lena, I just wanted to tell our colleagues tuning in a little bit about the Microschools Network. So, Microschools Network is a one-stop shop for small schools and microschools all around the world. So, we host the largest search engine and directory of schools all around the world. So, parents can learn more about these models. They can find them if they're moving to a new place, if they're digital nomads and considering looking at different places. So, it's a great spot. We've got almost 500,000 people that are coming every month to the site. And we're also hosting resources for educational founders and entrepreneurs, as well as people thinking about starting a school, regional groups to help you in your service. And we've got events like this talking about best practice, innovation in education. And of course, we've got an upcoming Microschools conference in less than a month in Washington, D.C. So we're excited about all of these things forthcoming. But first and foremost, let's move it to the lady of the hour, Lena. I'll pass it over to you. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Whitney. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's truly exciting. I started a micro school in Hyderabad in India, and that's when I first got to know about the micro schools network. And of course, we've been, tapping into your resources and are very excited about what we can learn as a community from each other. And we just got funded, and we're just about to start our second micro school in Pune, another city of India. So yeah, it's exciting times ahead. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. So there's a USP around what I'm doing. I'm from Australia, Indian blood, but came to India about 35 years ago. And so at that time, it was all based on rote learning, and I wanted to bring in activity-based kind of fun experiences. And that's when I launched Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High. They went on to becoming a network of 180 schools. And then in around 2016, I did this workshop with this Australian guy, and he asked me what my PAG was, my big, hairy, audacious goal. And I said 1 billion learners. And he said, why 1 billion learners? I said, well, if we can get to 1 billion learners and really get them to Swayam and come home to the self, we can actually raise human consciousness and shift human consciousness in a way that benefits the planet and mankind.
Oh, I
So
love that. That is really a big, beautiful goal.
So that is our goal, and we're here to share resources with anyone who would like to be part of the Dreamtime Learning Network. So we license our curriculum to schools as well. And so today's just to talk about a little bit about what's unique about the learning design that we've got, and why we feel it's kind of relevant. And yeah, please do stop me at any time, any of the participants, to ask me a question. And also, please, Cornwall, my colleague's going to, in the chat box, put in a journal. It's just a little summary of what I'm going to talk about today, with some, some points of reflection, and maybe some things that you can design for your school itself. Whether you want to use our resources or not.
Oh,
So,
that's great. Yeah. Use the chat
growing up,
box, unmute yourself. Let's hear all of your questions and comments, please.
please, yes, yes. So, it's years ago. Became fascinated by the mastery of the self when I was in Australia as a 12-year-old, and the Jonestown tragedy kind of occurred. And in the Jonestown tragedy, it was a mass murder suicide where mums actually fed poison to their kids. And the big questions to me were why? And how could somebody have so much power over somebody else's mind to get them to do something that was completely against human instinct and human behavior. And that's where my journey into the human mind and human behavior began. And my entire thing for could we get kids to become best versions of themselves, where they're thinking about what is conditioning them and how they can be conditioned in a way that moves them forward and doesn't keep them stuck. So this is my journey to coming back to India, learning a lot about our Indian spiritual wisdom, and then redesigning, sort of selling Kangaroo Kids in Billabong High to starting Dreamtime Learning. And Dreamtime is an Australian concept. It is the story of how the world came into being. It's the Aboriginal Australian idea that your inner world creates your outer reality. So anyway, so coming to, and then I'm going deeper and deeper and deeper into this, and then understanding how science and spirituality kind of meets. And that's what I just, want to delve into a little bit today. So let's think about thousands of years ago, if we go back into Indian spiritual wisdom, when we did not have MRIs or EEGs or any of those sorts of things. Spirituality contained wisdom that kind of amazes science today. You take meditation, for example. Today we know if we do an MRI on a brain that's actually practicing meditation, it physically changes the brain. It increases the density of the gray matter. It reduces anxiety in the fear center of the brain, the amygdala. And it does all of these things. We knew all of these things way before science kind of caught up with the tools and resources we have today. And let's face it, we really don't understand how the pyramids got built. We really don't understand. I mean, today quantum physics is catching up with a lot, but still there's more questions out there than not. Indians kind of understood the chakra system, which today science is kind of seeing as the nerve center of the body, and the connection between our gut and our brain is only sort of being understood today, while it was contained in the Indian spiritual wisdom for very many years. So today I'm going to kind of delve into that. We're in a world of a lot of luxury, a lot of convenience, a lot of choice, but we've got scarcity of the self. And as mankind, we're kind of getting more and more depressed. So we're going to take a moment to look back when we were cavemen. And when we were cavemen, what did we teach our kids? We taught them survival skills. We taught them how to hunt for animals and sort of gather berries. And then we transitioned to the agricultural age. And then what did we teach our kids? We sort of evolved our lessons. We taught them how to cultivate crops and tend to animals and to sustain a community. And then kind of came the industrial age, and education shifted to a focus on efficient productivity and timelines and repetition and timeliness and obedience. And then we fast forward to the knowledge economy, and we taught our children to absorb information, to retain it and produce an output. And very often we taught kids to do this without questioning or what they were reading. So I'm kind of saying that teaching children to memorize and regurgitate information is a crime today, because knowledge and information in that sense are no longer the key and the relevant piece. The real value today lies in doing something new with that knowledge. So it's how do you combine ideas, address problems, and create something entirely new based on something else that you've studied and some other information that you've learned, in a way that kind of benefits society and moves humanity forward. So this is the new currency that we're talking about. And the new currency has emerged at a time in history when when humanity actually urgently needs innovative thinkers to kind of solve the very problems and challenges that we as mankind have created: climate change, inequality, and resource depletion. So this is, where ancient wisdom sort of becomes a necessity. It's rooted in balance, in interconnectedness, in deep reflection. Vedic principles from the Indian scriptures teach us not only just to innovate, but to innovate responsibly, to innovate with mindfulness, ethics, and sustainability at the core of it. So at Dreamtime Learning, we blend these timeless principles with modern tech tools to empower children to kind of lead in this new economy, the creator economy. So, let's go down. So if the currency has changed from traditional skills to creating value, it's no longer about what you know, it's what can you do with what you know? Like or what is the new value you can create based on what you do know. But here's the challenge that our kids are facing because this new economy, the attention economy, the creator economy, is also where distraction is rampant because everyone's trying to get, our children's attention. And so today, attention is the most valuable resource. So whether it's social media, entertainment, or ads, this constant competition for our attention often gets us pulled away from having the deep focus required to master creativity or to master creation. And this is where the self-mastery wisdom comes in and why it's so valuable today.
Can I stop you for a minute? Because I think so much of what you said really resonates. So with Dreamtime, I mean, do you have sort of similar tenets that you hold, like you would say the IB, um, the IB profile of a graduate or something, like harnessing creativity, critical thinking, these sort of things? Is that kind of things that you're trying to build in this new attention economy?
No, absolutely. Dreamtime is an acronym for our student profile, which starts with design thinkers, reflective learners, is excited about learning. A lot of people say lifelong learner, but how will anyone be a lifelong learner if they're not excited about learning? If you're
Mm,
not opening them to the mysteries and the awe of what we don't know, rather than constantly teaching them what science knows today or
hmm
what we know as mankind. So yes, it is an acronym for a student profile. While building this, what we've done is we've looked at the IB, the IGCSE, the Indian CBSE, the ICSE. We've also looked at countries like New Zealand, Australia, America. We've looked at Finland, and what are some of the great things that each of these countries is doing. And then we've then gone back to spiritual wisdom and what we know. So we've looked at things that are marketed really well, like by Anthony Robbins
hmm
and John D. Martini and, Robin Sharma and Jay Shetty and all of these, if you look at all their life coaching sessions, it's based on self-mastery. And if you undo the packaging, it's actually based on spiritual wisdom that we once had.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. It's so true.
So yeah, so we do look at all of that. But specifically what we've done is we've looked at what will kids need in a world where we don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah. I think
Um,
that's the big question all of us are contemplating is what do kids need in the unknown, right?
I would say the number one superpower is focus, especially today because we all know what kind of distraction not just affects our kids but affects us as human beings. And rather than shy away from it, I always come into the world where our kids are born. So for me, the kids are born, they are digital natives. They maneuver and use digital resources and tools way better than they use a textbook
Yeah.
and more powerfully. And therefore, how do we harness that? And how do we draw kids to understanding? Human brain wants to thrive. It wants to survive, but very often it gets waylaid because it doesn't know how. It's not like those mums who fed their kids poison would have done that once upon a time.
hmm hmm
They were conditioned to. They were brain washed for one of another word. So if they were younger and they were given mastery over their thoughts, if they were given the power to feel enough and the power of community, would they then be looking for belongingness and validation and everything else from a cult, and allowing that to kind of power where who they are and where they are.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where it came from. Um, so while we don't know everything about the world going forward, we do know something, and that is that we don't know everything, that it is uncertain.
Yeah, yeah.
And that therefore, it's amazing that in India there's a course called the IIT technology, and it was one of the most vied for courses, and graduates would get placed in jobs for sure at very, very high income levels. So it was like the dream entrance for every aspirational parent for their
Hmm.
kids to get into. This last year, I think about 40% of IIT graduates didn't get jobs.
Really?
Well, it's like this. We keep rushing, so we rush towards any new technical skill that comes up. So
Yep.
there was a company called White Hat Junior because suddenly coding became a thing. And then these companies started learning how to teach coding at scale and became unicorns. And now coding is no longer a vital skill because
AI
you've
can do
got
it.
AI can code.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm very curious to happen what will happen with the Indian economy with AI. I was talking with one of our developers and he said, now you can build $100 million business with 5 employees. It's madness.
So what's the limit then? The limit is in belief of your own potential, and the limit is in the ideas you can have.
Hmm. Exactly.
And so that's the most urgent need to move away from an education in a box,
Yep.
which says 3 plus 3 equals 6, but doesn't teach you the magic of numbers, and that numbers are everywhere around us and in the universe, and the interplay of numbers is just so magical beyond what we can imagine. And therefore, just the thought about, is there a higher power?
Hmm.
Is there a universal field of consciousness? Are these things even possible?
Hmm. Yeah, it's remarkable. Anyway, I probably set you off of your presentation,
Not
but
at all.
really interesting.
So we teach in every session. So what you're seeing on the screen is actually just the session plans of what kids see,
Hmm.
but it's constantly teaching kids about their brains and the connection between their brains and their bodies, and the connection between their thoughts and emotions, and the connection between their thoughts and then their emotions, and then therefore their actions. And
Hmm.
so how can they keep having intentional thoughts to create intentional feelings and emotions, and to have then intentional choices, decisions, and actions? And if they do that, then they keep moving forward in a way that the world will demand of them. So as I said, being a lifelong learner is not just a nice to, it's a must. But how can you be a lifelong learner if you're not excited about learning? So we've actually put something tangible there, because you can't really measure whether your curriculum or your learning design leads to a lifelong learner. But what you can measure is, are kids excited about the learning?
Yep. Are they
Because at most,
curious? Are they
yeah,
interested? Are they
and
engaged?
engaged, and kids actually rate the sessions. So if the kids don't enjoy a session, then we go back to look at why. We then talk to the kids and we work out how do we make that even more relevant, even more relatable, even more engaging, even more kind of interactive and fun.
Hmm. That's
So
great.
yeah. So if creativity will demand focus, right? So you can do anything with 5 people, like you said, but you still need to be focused about where you want to get to. So it still requires that rigor and that discipline, and that is where we're coming in. That we're saying that kids, let us teach you how to master your attention through mindfulness, meditation, self-awareness. And that means we go beyond kind of conventional subjects, and we actually teach kids the tools of inner mastery. So in today's day, age of distraction, everything has to be relevant, relatable, and we're constantly looking at the real world as to how do we do that. If we know that Netflix, social media, video games are shaping the way that our kids are thinking, and perceiving the world. But if education doesn't rise to meet the challenge, so that we don't use the very tools that gaming uses, Netflix uses, social media uses to make learning really creative and relevant and fun, we won't be able to sustain our children's attention. And if we don't do that, then then the entire world will claim their attention and divert it, and education will just be left behind.
I think you're really right about that. I've seen various influencers or podcasters talking about the fact that like, oh, the more we gamify kids learning experiences, the more they think that real life isn't fun or they'll be bored or which, okay, maybe some part of this is true, but also the reality is that then they're going to be swept up in something else, right? They'll be distracted by something else. So this is just how the world works. So might as well
Correct.
make learning more exciting and fun than something else.
Absolutely. And I think part of the problem so far for the brain in learning has been that how do I connect this? How is this going to help me survive in the world? Or how is this going to make me thrive in the world? How's this going to be of benefit to me? And we all know the research that shows us that when the brain understands why it's doing something, it does it so much better, right? Just
Yeah, you need relevance, of course. That's for transfer of knowledge.
Yeah. So if we're constantly, if we actually ask ourselves, why are we teaching this? So, what you're seeing on screen right now is the Charlotte's Web. It's an English lesson plan, and but through that, kids are actually more fascinated by about phobias
Hmm.
and the fear of spiders than they are about Charlotte and Wilbur. So we go to the things that kids are naturally drawn and interested in by. And then, of course, we leverage, multimedia and gaming, but everywhere we're constantly looking at embedding relevance. So, um, so I'm coming back to the focus being we just need to get kids to master their thoughts. So we use in very many ways when when a character and in a novel has a thought, we'll ask kids, is that thought going to be helpful? Is it going to help them move forward? And if it's not, how could we reframe that thought to being something that will help them, if they're stuck, will help them to move forward? And through literature, through everything else, that's what we're constantly doing. So for us to master our thoughts, we need to master our brain and our mind. Um, it's we're constantly teaching kids about their brains. What is this left brain, right brain? Why do we remember the lyrics of songs? And yet, if we just get the lyrics without the music, we don't remember it. Why is it if you walk into a wine store, and you walk out with a bottle of wine, be it German or French, and I ask you why have you bought that particular wine? You say because I like French wine or German wine, and then I actually relate to you that French music was playing when you picked up the French wine, or German music was playing when you picked up the German wine. And so, how does your subconscious work? How does it? Kids are more fascinated by all of that than they are, by what we're actually teaching them.
Yeah, absolutely. Kids will go deep dives and curious about all kinds of things, the way that their body works, about why did that happen? So it's great to be able to go on tangents and curiosities.
Absolutely. And do we have space and time for kids to ask their curious questions,
Hmm.
and then follow them? So the way we've designed the learning using the science of learning, our kids actually finish, say, grade 1 and grade 2 in 3 hours. 2 hours, 40 minutes if it's in the online school, but 3 hours if it's in the physical school. And that means the second half of the day, kids get to personalize their learning. They get to ask the deeply curious questions and go down the rabbit hole. And that doesn't have to be for a grade or a score or a percentage or anything else. It's just to fulfill the curious question that they have.
It's wonderful. It's very interesting. They'll finish in an hour and a half to 3 hours.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And what's I think is amazing is parents are just starting to understand that learning as it existed in the conventional sense, in the traditional sense. I don't know about where you are, but in India, especially through COVID, when parents saw the learning come home, they suddenly realized, I am paying so much money for this, and how is this going to be helpful to my kid in the world outside of school, was one of the biggest question marks.
Yeah,
And
I think it's really what spurred this micro school movement, the popularity, all kinds of a more of a an acceptance of unconventional learning environments because of everything that you just mentioned, right? Your parents all of a sudden were at home, they were seeing what online learning was looking like, and they just couldn't fathom how it was going to be helpful or practical in the future.
well, I think one of just a slight difference is that they weren't seeing what online education looks like. They were looking at what the classroom learning looks like online. So if I think if we design, so the design that we have is for an online school as well. Um, but then you're using the tool of technology to heighten the learning, to gamify it, to make it as interactive as possible, to do all of these things. What was happening in India, and I don't know about where you are, but conventional classroom was coming online, and then parents suddenly understood, oh my, read chapter one and it's your turn now, Whitney. And it was just like this monotone and boredom, and kids just so tuned out. And parents for once suddenly realized why their kids were not wanting to go to school, or why they weren't relating to what was going on in school. And I think the exciting space we're in now, is as learning is becoming abundant and demonetized, these movements, like the micro school movement, homeschooling, online schooling, these alternate methods of learning are going to take off, because now parents are no longer so scared about tertiary education. And I was speaking to somebody in Canada yesterday, somebody who's interested in becoming an investor, and he was just sort of saying that Harvard, people at Harvard, and they are scared about what's going to happen to their institutions, because it's no longer, that scarcity of learning is no longer there. It's becoming abundant. So we're saying, in this world of abundance, kids will have to be self-driven, motivated, and focused. And how do we teach them to do that? And can we center an entire learning methodology around that? And then the 3+3 kind of gets taught within that,
Hmm.
um, rather than the other way around.
I love it. It also brings back to your earlier point that focus is a superpower.
It
Focus
is.
on what your goals are, what you want to do, what you're able to learn, what you're able to complete, and also what you're able to think of and build.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a lot of there's a saying in one of our scriptures that the very purpose of life is a life of purpose. And I think in a world where we've increasingly got individualistic, and it's about me and not the community. It's about me and not humanity. I think that what we're wanting to do is create a shift in that very sort of thinking, that kids start focusing on what their purpose is, and aligning learning with their personal and their goals for wanting to contribute. In which way do they want to contribute to the world? One of the things is that mankind, as in mankind, is the only species that takes more or plunders more from the earth than it gives. Every other living species gives back more than it takes. And I think that balance is something that we kind of need to change. And we need to, instead of this standardization, we need to deep dive into kids' uniqueness, their individuality, and help them to find their purpose for being.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can certainly cultivate or foster individuality and customized learning at the same time as fostering a concern about your community and the well-being of the planet. That those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Not at all. Not at all. And if you go to any of the ancient wisdom, it kind of says that it part of life is trying to find as much physical comfort as you can, um, but not at the cost of the planet. So, it's when you watch movies like Dark Waters or Painkillers or any of these movies, and you see where the world's gone in terms of, people wanting the top line and bottom line. Um, first, and doesn't matter what it does to mankind or humanity or the planet. I think that's where we have to come back to something that, that's a little bit more meaningful as to, and if you look at Whitney, if you look at the statistics, depression, anxiety, and suicides are on the rise. And we live more abundant lives than we ever did. We have more choice, we have more comfort than any of our ancestors did. So why would that be so if that was the quest? If the quest was to have all of those external things, and we have them now, then why are we feeling so much of void, and why is depression and anxiety on the rise? So there is something that means that we need to actually engage meaningfully with, others and with the planet. That's hopefully what we can teach kids to do. So just, if this was yours, is getting kids to really cultivate a spirit of questioning, and um, uh, having to kind of come up with those questions, those things that they're deeply curious about. And that's what through the curriculum we're, constantly wanting to do. We know that, curiosity is the cornerstone of everything. Like, it's a cornerstone of critical thinking, creativity, all the things you spoke about earlier, of innovation. It's only if we ask a question, why, what if, how, if we ask those questions, that we can get to something else for the world and for humanity. I'm open to questions if anyone has, anyone like to interact or ask me any questions as we go along.
So I'll ask a question maybe while someone else is thinking of one. Um, I'm curious your experience with students who have been in traditional environments and they had challenges. Maybe it was social, maybe it was they couldn't meet the academic needs at the time and there was too much stress and pressure surrounding that. I know that we've seen when we've taken kids into our own school at in Washington, D.C. at MISA, it's I mean, we've it's just been remarkable to see how they can flourish and grow and come back to being engaged and curious learners at older ages too, 15, 16, 17, when they're also going through a really hormonally charged, challenging adolescent time. So, so how have you dealt with lots of kids like that or students that the parents sought your expertise because of they really, I think that's the hardest thing for me is when I see kids that have lost their spark and they're so young. Where did your curiosity go, you know?
Absolutely. So a few things happen when you are a micro school. One is that you can actually alter for pace, right? So a lot of kids um, don't they disengage from school because they're bored. They've mastered a concept. That same concept's being taught again and again and again. So in a micro school, a kid could be doing, English in grade 3, but maths in grade 4, or vice versa. We can alter for that because we don't have the logistical nightmares of a really large scale school. And but Indian schools are, I mean, we can have like 4,000 kids in a school. It's not unknown. The
Oh
normal.
no, there's plenty of US high schools and that are similar. I mean, some of my friends graduated with 1,000 kids in their class, so huge.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we get to be able to stretch kids where they've mastered a concept. So, for example, say we've kids have mastered 3 + 3 = 6. Now, what you can do is the kids who haven't mastered that can practice so that they're confident to go to the next step. But the kids who've mastered that can go into an expansion class where you're asking more sort of divergent questions, like the answer six, what are the possible questions without using any numbers? And so now they're in groups trying to think of what kind of questions could they ask for. I mean, it's not unusual in a small scale of a micro school for kids to be creating assessments and creating quizzes for kids in the other group. So, based on what they've learned so far, two sets of kids will create quizzes for the other. And obviously trying to make it the most difficult, challenging possible because you know, this.
Yeah, of course. Peer teaching, they love it. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think these are all sorts of things that happen in a micro school that can't happen in a school with like, I don't know about, again, we can have up to 60 kids in a classroom here. And the norm is 40, and it's the international schools that have 24, the high fee paying schools. But yeah, now again in a micro school, you've got 10 to maximum 15 kids in a classroom, and I think that just makes so much of a difference about what kids can actually do.
And in the legislation within India, it allows micro schools as well, or are you operating as like within a homeschool sort of framework and then
Yes,
there? Mhm.
yes. It's homeschooling in a physical space.
Yeah, I think that's how I've heard from a lot of founders is that as long as there's homeschool laws within the country or jurisdiction that they want to operate, then they should be fine.
Absolutely. And it's going to change, Whitney. I mean, once upon a time in India, you couldn't run a school for profit. You had to run a school under a charitable trust. And, it led to all sorts of things like parents were paying huge amounts of money as donations under the table in cash. But today, all of that's changed, right? I think innovation happens. People like us start a movement, and then it just takes off. And then it's like artificial intelligence. It's too late to put the genie back in the bottle. The genie's already kind of out there. So what do you
Absolutely. Oh, it's there. It's there and
do?
it's growing.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna just kind of go to with sort of a lot of getting kids to ask the right questions, emphasis on the power of inquiry. Uh, I'm just going to go to slide 22. That's for Cormel's benefit. Um, so what we want to see is learning that goes from a transactional format to a transformational format. And this idea is not unique to only the Indian spiritual wisdom, Aboriginal wisdom, which dates back over 60,000 years, North American Indian traditions. Have always emphasized harmony with oneself and the world. And all of these traditions kind of share one universal idea, which is that our inner world shapes our outer reality. And when kids ask me that, like, what does that kind of mean? And you'll talk to them, there's two stories I narrate very often. One is the salesman from America go to Africa to look at setting up a shoe factory. And one says, both looking at the same thing. One telegrams back, no opportunity, nobody wears shoes. And the other one writes back, fabulous opportunity, nobody wears shoes. And they're both actually looking at exactly the same thing, but just have a slightly different thought on it. And then how that would sort of shift the outcome for both these salespeople. So so success in this creator economy, I think these are the things we want to be focusing on in schools. How do we teach kids to how their habits are going to impact their life? how their values are going to impact their life. What are their motivators and drivers, and how do they turn them on to kind of have positive impact in their life? To have them have the emotional awareness, emotional language, the ability to regulate and even master over their emotions, to understand needs, and to understand their individual strengths. And then kind of like, can we redefine success in a more authentic way, with a self-directed purpose for kids? Because as it is, we know 85% of success does come from mastering our inner world, from our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. Sorry. I've come to Oman, Muscat, where the air is really clear, but I've come from Bombay, where the air is really not very conducive to breathing. So, any questions at all?
I think just related to what you were talking about was that there's what I've seen, I've been really excited as well recently is a lot of conversation about ethics, a lot of conversation about power structures and things that are happening because of films like Adolescence or because of shows like that. And you're seeing it all across the public, private, all kinds of places. And I think like as more and more mainstream people and movies and films and all of the ways that we consume information, that it's just going to become more and more prevalent, all of these things that you've been talking about.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I talk to the instructional design team, and we call them curiosity and excitement architects, is to make sure that we're not moralizing and telling kids what to think.
Mm-hmm.
So ethics becomes this area, and how do you teach ethics without teaching kids what's right and what's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And we do it in very interesting ways. We'll, for example, if Komal takes you to slide 21, I think that lesson plan is about vaccinations. And instead of telling them vaccinations are good or bad, we actually talk about people are pro-vaccinations and people are anti-vaccination. But then we'll do something very interesting when they are where they're going to create their argument. The only information they've got is from the opposite side of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're pro-vaccination, all the information they've got is from the anti-vaccination world, and vice versa. Because we're in some sense wanting to teach kids empathy, right? That understanding another person's point of view, because not every point of view of yours has to be the only, it has to be a universal one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we start getting the world closer and closer together. If, for example, the Democrats and Republicans could see each other's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
or and for anything, but vegetarians, non-vegetarians, whenever there's two opposite ways of viewing something and a belief system has got set in, that can kids actually look at things from the opposite belief system, and therefore can we bring the world and humanity closer together instead of um, at being pulled apart.
Well, it's a part of developing both critical thinking and empathy, right? To think about picking apart why you think this way, what made you think that way, is it best? And I think that's a lot of part of digital literacy too, which is just so needed across generations, not just for kids.
Yep,
I think we also need to start our own digital literacy educational for older people too.
absolutely. So, when I was an English teacher in Australia, I'd start off with kids reading the news. And today I'll tell kids not to watch the news. Everything, especially because news has become 24 hours a day, it's programmed to keep us rooted. And the way to keep us rooted to the television screen is to spark off our fear center.
Hmm.
So almost everything is breaking news. And it's always fearful. And it's
Well, it's
always
also
based
a 24-hour news cycle as well, too. So there's always got to be a story.
and it's got to be scary because otherwise,
Hmm.
nobody wants to feel good. And that comes from, that comes from the media world understanding the neuroscience and behavioral science better than we educators do. And it's saying that the more I keep your brain scared and feeling scarce, the more attention it's going to give me because from an evolutionary perspective, it's been trained to watch out for the tiger,
Hmm.
being trained to watch out for fear and scarcity, not the other way around. So how do we give kids the understanding of that? So even if they do choose to watch the news, they watch it with that discernment
Yep.
of, So I'm just actually gonna go, we're almost towards the end. I'm gonna go to
And also before, as you're wrapping up as well too, I'm just going to ask you a few questions that attendees had asked when they had signed up. Someone was wondering, how do we set up a learning environment for self-mastery, emotional awareness, and regulation, and thriving relationships?
so one of the thing is to use a lot of literature to do that, because that's just a perfect bounce off for it. The other thing is if you do download, Komal, have you put the journal link in the chat box?
I'm just doing it right now. Just a
Yeah. So the second thing is if you download the journal, it actually just takes you through a few exercises you can do. Because when you're doing this, some of the things you do need to do is so we've got a little mind map there of all the ways in which all the touch points of the school. And if you're going to redefine success as self-mastery, what are all the things you'd want to be looking at as a school to redesign? So we've got some tools there. We've got some strategies there. We've got some reflective questions there. And then like imagining a new school, if we didn't care about percentages and grades and report cards, what would we actually teach in school?
Hmm.
And could we focus around that and make the technical knowledge secondary to that? Because kids will actually pick up the technical knowledge.
Yep, absolutely they will.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go to come on, if you can just go to slide 32. And so this is from one of our lesson plans where we actually teach the kids why the brain is focused to looking at bad. And so if you experience a lot of good, but you experience just one thing that's bad, how your brain focuses on the bad. And then we give them tools and strategies to do the opposite. And with very young kids, like these brains, a happy brain and a sad brain. And then every time they have a thought that's not a negative thought, but a thought that could get them stuck, they color one brain in versus the other. And we teach them things like gratitude and what it does to the chemical levels in your brain and your body when you do practice some of those things mindfully. Um, so this is actually my question to all parents and educators. What could be possible if we did not care again about percentage grades and report cards? And I take the story back to, Newton Einstein's mom, who just had deep belief in their kids, even though their kids didn't do well in school. And it's their acceptance and love, unconditional, and not conditioned in their academic success or their grades. And then, therefore, you kind of understand that, Einstein discovering or developing the theory of relativity did not come from wanting an external accolade or, validation. It came because he was deeply curious, and his mother honored that curiosity. And so, therefore, if we can all, as educators, I think, just honor the curiosity of our kids, we've got lots of great things we could do. And then I'm going to go straight to. So, Komal, can you just go to slide 34? So on this slide, it's a very quick look at, we're teaching Harry Potter. And this is actually Cornwell's designed this lesson plan, but we're teaching Harry Potter, but we're coming from we start with Greta Thunberg. We then explore autism and neurodivergence. And then we look at the Muggle world and the wizard world. And because even in the wizard world, you have squibs and so we kind of approach it in a way that kids feel very comfortable to think about the fact that every brain is really, really different.
Well, that's great. That sounds like a great lesson. I want to take it.
I'll make sure you get one.
Please let me attend the next one when you're going through it.
Okay. So I'm now on slide 37. So we want to, for the person who asked the question, we want to create a system where students are driven by their own interests and passions and not confined by the boundaries of the board examinations. And I speaking from deep conviction, but also proven through the Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High system. Parents always thought that kids can't come to school, have fun, and do well in exams. And we showed that we had world toppers and country toppers and state toppers, and kids loved coming to school. So in that sense, I'm board agnostic. Kids, and we had across those schools, we had all boards, the international boards as well as the Indian boards. A board examination shouldn't confine and dictate what we teach. I believe that's just like a marker that at the moment we have to get kids through, and they'll get through it in more exciting ways if they've been if they've come to love learning in some sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things too where it's like if they have a love of learning, if they have a goal, they have something that they want in mind, even if they haven't been preparing their whole lives or their whole year for a standardized test, they certainly can do something in a short amount of time and do excellent. And already
Absolutely.
we've covered a lot of these things in different ways than a traditional method as well. So it's there and they've learned it deeply.
So there's Dr. David Hawkins' work that um, talks about field of consciousness and how field of consciousness can change and if we lift our vibrational energies. And so what we're attempting to do at Dreamtime Learning, or what we are doing, is that's all we want to do. We want to lift kids' vibrational energies, and if we can have an education that empowers every child to be the best version of themselves, and we give them the tools and strategies that they'll need to Swayam, which is to master their thoughts, emotions, and actions, I think we can lift the field of consciousness. And this is just a something that I found really interesting. It should.
The 100th monkey effect. So that's interesting. There is this island, I think, in Japan, and there were these monkeys that were eating yams with sand. And they would, grind their teeth and the sand in the yams. Sand in the yam's not good, right? One monkey figured out that, hey, if I wash the yam and eat it, no sand in my yam. They figured it was about 100, the 100th monkey figured out that's what you do. So then all of a sudden, islands in India, Africa, America, these same species of monkeys are washing their yams, even though these other monkeys on the island never intermingled with the other monkeys. So what does that tell you? And what we're learning here about coherent energy and collective consciousness, even beings like monkeys have this sentient sense about them, if you will, some connection, some divine universal connection. They call it the 100th monkey effect.
Oh, I love that.
So Whitney, I think we're part of the 100th monkey effect. We're wanting to sparkle kind of a ripple of change in education that spreads to all countries, all children, and power of collective action. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. We'll make it to that 1 billion kids in our lifetime.
So if anyone has any questions, I'd be really happy to take them.
Yes, and I'll be sending a recording of this tomorrow. I'll include your email if that's okay, Lena, if anyone wants to reach out to you for questions. I'll also be sending the journal that you kindly shared, so I'll include that for folks as well. I'll give it a few minutes to ask some questions, and I'll
Well,
also,
I have a question if I can go ahead with that.
please.
Microschools seems to be like the new revolution right now. I'm sorry, I'm having a sore throat. But to get to this change, parents' mindset needs to be changed. How do you think this movement can be rolled on to the parent level? Because I know children are going to benefit from it, but I think the parents are the biggest mindset changers that we need to get into.
So, thank you for the question, Aruna. I think a lot of things are happening that will get us there. One is, the example I just spoke about, the IIT. We all know that every Indian parent's dream is to get their kid into an IIT, but suddenly that's become a thing to think about. That what we're going to aspire for, that perfect grade in the school for our kids to get into IIT, because, after they finish that, also there's a lack of jobs. So then what is going to be valued in the world going forward? And, I talk about the four types of people that will be valued in the world going forward. One's got a personal monopoly, a sort of subset of unique skills that makes him only him. Or he's got a deep specialization. So if he's a engineering graduate, he's the best engineering graduate, and everyone needs him because he's going to give something to them that nobody else can. The third type of person is someone with very high EQ. So while you have, AI diagnosing cancer, and you have AI drafting divorce agreements, et cetera, you still need that humanness to hold a person's hand to take them through that experience as emotionally whole. And the fourth type of person is the moonshot thinker, right? The really, really unconventional, out of the box thinker, connecting ideas and dots in strange ways that weren't done before. And all these types of four people are not going to be served by the existing education system. So if you look at the handout I've created, I'm actually asking you to look at what does this mean if you want to do this, be part of an education disruption. What does it mean in terms of professional development for your staff? What does it mean for your school environment and culture? Like, what will your school walls and messages say? What does it mean for your learning design? I mean, how do you create project-based passion projects, life skills and life mastery? What does it mean for your parent community? So how do you involve parents into, when I started Kangaroo Kids, I only started with 10 kids because nobody believed in it, because I wasn't I wasn't getting kids ready for tests into for and entrance into schools. But then parents saw the difference that those kids had the confidence and those abilities, and spoke to another 10 parents. So how do you make parents your evangelists? How do you make parents your role models and your ambassadors in changing the message? And that comes through a process, I think, of us giving them the language, us giving them the tools and the understanding to be able to communicate this further.
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas Arnett is also doing a lot of work at the Christensen Institute, the Clayton Christensen Institute, the famous lecturer from Harvard, about educational disruption. And so he talks really about kind of like the historic side of innovation and how long it takes for various people and stakeholders to get on board. And so I think just what you said, we've got our early stakeholders, our early adopters that are keen to get started and do it. And it's just a matter of time before some people in your neighborhood, some people in your community are making those choices. And then once they do, then other people start feeling more comfortable through evangelists. Um, and then also it's aspirational too, right? I mean, the more successful or the more people that you aspire to be like that are choosing to make those kind of decisions with those kids, I think that's also a huge thing, right? I mean, I want to say 10 years ago, probably when Mark Zuckerberg had started the alt school and Elon Musk had also started a couple of micro schools for his kids, and then Khan Academy came about. And so I think also, right, there was a big tech boom, and that was kind of what also all of a sudden people started thinking about, oh, we could do education different. Look at these people who are thinking about education differently. So I think there's a lot of fronts and there's a lot of stakeholders to convince. But I think the parents are the easiest. The successful parents, those are the ones that you want to get to, and you want them to be screaming from the mountaintops about their experience with their kids, because they're the
Absolutely.
ones. Because that's the easiest way to convert is through word of mouth.
Absolutely. Okay. Guess if there are no more questions.
Yeah. If there's no more questions, then we can just say thank you so much, Lina, for your time today. It was a real pleasure, and certainly reach out to her if you have additional questions or want more information about her model, Dreamtime Learning. And we've also got some exciting things coming up. So as part of our evangelist of alternative environments, we have Microschools Week coming up April 28th to May 2nd. So we certainly invite you guys to participate. Anyone who wants to. It's really, we're using the same hashtags. We're trying to share content all about learner-driven environments, future-proof education, a variety of things that all of our learning environments have in common. And so this is a great opportunity to spread the word, to join, to share each other's content so people can see this isn't just something that we're uniquely doing. No, this is happening all over the world, kind of like the agricultural revolution, right? It didn't just start in one point, it started in all kinds of places around the globe simultaneously. And so this is really what we're trying to do with Micro Schools Week is let a lot of people know that this is happening, this is exciting, get to know more about micro schools and the benefits that they can offer for your child, your community. So there's some information on our website about that. We also have our Micro Schools conference that's coming up May 8th to 9th, and we're going to be talking a lot about systemic change in a larger scale from a macro side of things, talking about compassionate systems awareness from the MIT Systems Awareness Lab. And also, what do we look at in terms of if we have big school systems and we want to pilot small school systems like micro schools within it for customization, for neurodivergence, for gifted kids, for a variety of different purposes. So lots of exciting things coming up in the next couple of weeks. We invite you to join that as well. And thank you so much, Lina, for your time and for your colleagues' time. I know you're busy, so
Thank
so
you so much, Whitney. Thank you. Look forward to you speaking to the Indian microschooling community soon. Um, my colleague will reach out to you for
oh,
that.
that would be fabulous. Well, thank you so much. Bye-bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.